This an all-out blitz, real hard hits, them other podcast trash, we gon' make them all quit. We cover all the topics with intelligence and logic. I know you wanna score, but ID gon' stop it. We from Texas, so that mean that we Texans. Breaking down the X's and O's, our profession. No complaining, just training, you see the progression. They had a Pro Bowl for talk shows, we get selected. We gon' celebrate every win like a birthday. Ray J with the news, first with all the updates. Spin move on the competition, yeah, we juking them. You not really in touch if you not tuning in. This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown, we not trying to go for 3. And it's best if you get up out the street, cause them bulls out the pen and they bout to stampede.
Houston Texans, what up?
What up?
What up?
What up?
What up?
What up?
Hey!
Welcome to the Texans Fan Battle Podcast. Guys, before I do the introduction, I just want to apologize. I have came ill a little bit, so I might be a little under the weather. Just call me the mailman. Rain, sleet, snow, whatever it is, I'm here to deliver. But just, bear with me a little bit. But as always, I'm your host tonight, Matthew Briggs. We just had a great month of Black History Month with Crenshaw as our host, so it was amazing. We were excited to have it. But sadly, he's not here. He's going to be jumping in late. He wants to be a diva tonight and come fastly late. So I'm going to kick it off to my legend of Twitter and Reddit and the spaces. I got Mr. VT Brown Chubby Bear.
What's going on, guys?
And guys, we got a special guest to you tonight. He is a Emmy Award winning journalist. You can find him in KPRC in Houston, Channel 2, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Chancellor Johnson, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. First off, before I say anything, I want to make sure that I need to know who came up with that intro, because it was playing and I'm like, yo, it's tough.
All BT. That's all him.
ET salute. The beat, the production was tough. The bars, I'm like, okay. Honestly, this is probably, I'm not exaggerating. That's probably the best intro music to a podcast I've ever heard ever.
Well, I guess the music is Man or Mike. I did the video, but Man or Mike, he's on Instagram, and he's actually a pretty awesome artist.
He actually he's a Cowboys fan, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And when the Texans suck, he freestyles about it all the time. But I guess he has a lot of Texan friends, so
it was dope. It was dope.
So all right, man. Well, let's kick it off with some NFL news. First ever NFL PA had their first rating ever. Surprisingly, the Texans were number 4. I believe the Vikings finished 1.
Yep, Vikings were number 1.
The Commanders, of course, not surprising, were 32, and of course the Jaguars with the rat infestation, got them to 28th. Chancellor, I'll kick off with you. What's your thoughts of this? Is it a pretty cool new conception, or what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think surprising is a really good word to use for the Texans coming in as high as they did. You have to remember and go back even like just a couple of years ago during the Jack Easterby era. And, it's kind of like the he who should not be named, right? Like the Texans caught a lot of flack from outside the organization to inside the organization. We've had players come out after they leave the Texans and talk about how the way that the Texans operate, whether that's from the front office to kind of just like day to day, isn't the best in the league. So clearly they were able to get something right. For instance, one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that the Texans allow their players to sleep in their own homes the Saturday night before their game. And so I came from Green Bay, Wisconsin, for my last stop. I covered the Packers for 2 years while I was there, and they had everybody in a hotel. Now, mind you, it's probably for a good reason because there's not much to get into with the Packers except probably getting into some trouble like on a Saturday night. But to me, that was actually a surprise to me, that the fact that the Texans allowed that. And, they allow, their players to kind of make their own choices. They they serve good food in the dining hall and the cafeteria for the players. I've had it. It's pretty good, and all that stuff matters to these guys, especially when you're not winning games. You need something to kind of boost the morale of players when you're getting drummed or, you're going through these long stretches and these losing streaks. Well, hey, look, when you show up to work, at least that facility is nice. Right. So it's good to see that the Texans came up pretty high on that. And, maybe that can be a part of their pitch as they enter into free agency with all this cap space.
All right. BT, what about you?
So I was obviously very happy that we scored number 4 overall. What I found interesting was the Cardinals. The Cardinals have the worst gym, weight room F minus. I don't know how you can be an NFL franchise and have that poor of a weight room. People were saying that it's unsafe because it's overpacked. That is ridiculous. I saw that in multiple organizations did not have a family room. Now we don't have one in the building, but we have a daycare across the street. So that's positive. But I read that in some places the wives were sitting on the floor of the bathroom because they needed to breastfeed their children, and that was the only place. I mean, I don't understand how it's 2023 and you're a $1 billion organization and you don't have a 4x4 a little room so they can feed their child. I mean, that's kind of freaking nuts. What I also found interesting was the Cardinals were the only organization to charge players for food. So if you go in the off season and you want to work out or you want to take home dinner, you are charged. It comes off your payroll. I don't understand how they're that petty. My question actually to you, Chancellor, is this is obviously the first time this has happened. And I always assumed that players just found out about this. This might be the first time that fans knew about this, but I had figured this is something players knew about. But obviously, if the NFLPA is making this public, maybe that's not necessarily the case. Do you think this is going to affect free agency at all? Or do you think this is just going to shame owners into fixing their stuff?
I would say the biggest thing that the report card does is hold these organizations accountable, right? So whether it's with the training facilities, as far as the trainers, how they treat the players, to just little simple things, right? As far as with the Cardinals charging their players for meals. If you're the Cardinals, in your bid well as an owner charging the players for meals, it's cool. You think you're being slick by doing that, but now that it is out for everybody to see and it's public, that's embarrassing. And I guarantee you that will change next year. No owner wants to be the only owner that charges their players for meals. It's not really a good look. As far as the question of will it affect free agency, my answer to that is no, because when it comes to free agency, it showed me the money. Right. So now, especially with the Cardinals, if the Cardinals are the only team that does that, like everybody else is, who's going to pay me the highest amount of money? Like, that's what it comes down to. I think for the Texans, the good thing is you're in a state that doesn't charge you, that doesn't have that state tax fee. I think that goes a long way for some players. We've seen that at the NBA level with the Rockets.
Yeah. Jordan Pryor came out and says, I want to play either Texas or Florida because he does not want to play the right.
So to me, that matters, So I think at the end of the day, it's, how many zeros are on that check. Then I guess, did this facility have a sauna or a hot tub or did it not?
Right. Okay. All right. Well, from bright to dark, let's talk about Alvin Kamara. Looking at some jail time, it seems like he was earlier arrested for his assault. Chancellor, I'll kick off with you. Is this going to hurt the Saints or hurt his career? Or is he going to somehow pull off Ray Lewis and not see no jail time?
Yeah, I as far as the jail time, I can't really speak on that too much because I just don't know. But as far as will it hurt his career in the long run? Not really, because in my opinion, first of all, you got to think we're talking about the NFL here, right? Like unless you really murder somebody like we saw like with Henry Ruggs in his situation, like most of the time they'll let you go, especially like when you consider some of these domestic abuse cases that we've seen over the years. And like to name a name, Tyreek Hill, right? Tyreek Hill got into some stuff. Joe Mixon got into some stuff. Joe Mixon was pre-NFL, but like now it's Joe Mixon, the Pro Bowl running back. Like no one really kind of thinks about that for the most
Kareem
part.
Hunt, right.
Right. So it doesn't, in
Right.
in Alvin Kamara's situation, it was, something between him and another guy. I know he had a group with him as well too, but like no one, even this season, it was like, will he get suspended and how will it affect my fantasy team? But outside of that, no one really cared. You know what I mean? So I don't think it'll affect Alvin Kamara too much, kind of moving forward.
All right. BT, what about you?
I understand that this is the NFL, and most of the time we don't do stuff for violence. The only reason why I think this could have a different outtake is because he admitted it and it's on tape, and it's a felony charge. And I'm not saying that it would affect the suspension. I'm just saying that he could literally go to jail. And that's, I think that if that wasn't the case, then yeah, his career wouldn't have been affected. But from my understanding, Nevada has a mandatory minimum for this sort of violence. And and if there's a mandatory minimum, it's not like they can just get around it and simply slap, give him a wrist slap or something. I actually think he could do some time. Now, do I think it's going to be real time? No, I think it, potentially under a year or whatever, or even much, much less. But I think there's a chance that he could actually be in the slammer for a period of time, simply because of the mandatory minimums. And there's too much video evidence. There's video evidence of the attack, and then there's video evidence of him bragging about it. So I don't know how he's claiming not guilty. I think the only reason why it's going to affect him is just because there's just way too much video evidence of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of other slumbags, Dan Snyder pretty much blocked. I can't think of his name. VT, what's his name?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos from buying the Commanders. Now he is being sued, and they're thinking about bringing Jerry Jones to help sell the Commanders. So, VT, I'll kick it off with you. What's your thoughts on this?
So this I found interesting because it's not necessarily just the reason why he blocked Bezos, right? Because those two have an issue because Bezos owns the Washington Post, and the Washington Post was the one that outed Dan Snyder about a lot of this stuff. What I find interesting, if we rewind a little bit, about the Bank of America loan, right? It was a $55 million Bank of America loan that Dan Snyder did not tell his two other minority owners. Now, at that time, they owned 40%. So that's a fair amount of ownership. And they were disgusted with the loan and the fact that he didn't tell them that the NFL got involved and negotiated a settlement. And so on top of that $55 million loan, Dan Snyder had to take, I believe, an $875 million loan to pay off the minority shares. So he has basically $900 million in debt just in those two things that we know about. Now he's under investigation by the feds because of this loan. So I just think he's in a shit situation. They've now asked Jerry Jones to get in the middle and broker a deal because this could get out of hand real quick. Once the feds start opening up the books for Dan Snyder, who else knows how many owners are going to be involved in other things? So I can only assume the NFL's like, get this done quickly. Dan Snyder could take down other people without even trying right now, and I think that's going to be really interesting to see how they try to calm him down and say, just let Bezos buy this, because he could easily be more than 30% owner, right? So Jerry Jones could save the NFL again.
Chancellor, what about you? What do you think?
Can you guys remember the last time Snyder was involved in something that was positive? Seems like it's something about this guy is always in a negative light. We do know that Jeff Bezos has been trying to buy and try to get ownership for a while now. He looked into the Seattle Seahawks when they were rumored to have an opening. Now it's with the Washington Commanders. Also, too, on a local level for the Houston folk, Tillman Fertitta, the Rockets owner, has put his name out there as well, too, trying to get NFL team. But, you kind of touched on it earlier with Snyder. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of NFL owners are a little bit concerned about him because, listen, the NFL ownership group it's a big boys club. There's a lot of stuff that goes on between them that, I think if it got out public in general, like we can just call a spade a spade. Some shady stuff, whether it's regarding the NFL to just life outside the NFL when no one else is watching. That clearly that Dan Snyder isn't going out without a fight. So it will be really interesting to see how it ultimately all plays out.
Yeah. I tell you, you can't get a better soap opera in the NFL sometimes. It's just, I tell you. All right, well, let's move on to some NFL Combine. I spelled it wrong on the screen, so I'm going to take that off. But kicking it off with some news from the Combine, we'll do some good and some bad. Jalen Carter, speaking of bad, it lied to the police officer about drag racing and causing two young men to lose their lives. Then it looked like his stock's going to drop tremendously from what reports are saying. Chancellor, I kick off to you. What's your thoughts on this, and how bad is it going to affect him?
Yeah, Jalen Carter, I think, probably was the most talented and dominant player heading into this draft, and he had a real case for being number one, especially if Chicago ultimately decided that they want to stay there instead of trading back since they didn't want a quarterback. But when you talk about getting involved in potentially drag racing, allegedly, and the NFL is just coming off. We're not even 2 years removed from the Henry Ruggs situation. We saw how that ultimately played out. I am concerned that he could drop really, really far, especially because it's like, listen, like, what are you doing? Like, it's one thing with the Alvin Kamara situation where, hey, you can say, hey, look, something happened. You know, one thing led to another. Before I knew it, punches were being thrown, whatever. But to be a guy in Jalen Carter, who you knew you were going to be at worst a top 3 NFL draft pick, fresh off a championship, you say, you know what? My decision making is to hop in this car and to drag race down the street. And not only that, 2 people died.
And lie about it.
And he lied about it. And this is also coming off where there were also multiple reports from pretty good sources that they were concerned about his character issues just in general, as far as housing meetings and practices and things like that. When you put all that combined, his stock is going to plummet from a potential number 1 overall pick to who knows where. I think with his talent and how dominant he was, you know, I don't know how far he will drop, but like it is something concerning. And at the end of the day, it's going to cost him in the pocketbook very largely, because we know how the guaranteed money works. But you know, it is sad. But NFL aside, it's sad because 2 people lost their lives, and that's something that you don't want to forget. Exactly. And now you're talking about a legal case. You know, like the NFL could step in and potentially, I don't know, they might be able to do something. And then also just how will it play out in court? You know, he said he's going to try to clear his name, but it could get from bad to worse quickly.
Yeah, I told VT before the show started, I think he's going to drop to mid-20s, maybe the second round. Who knows? VT, what about you? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this could really go both ways, and it's really up to him right now. If he decides that he's going to fight this all the way, I think that they could bring the hammer on him, because from the reports I read, they have got video surveillance. So if he's saying he wasn't there and they are able to show license plates and so forth, obviously that's not going to go well. They also, you know, the other interesting fact is the car that he was allegedly racing was a car that he got through NIL. So I don't know if that's going to shine a little more light on NIL itself. You know, that's a problem. The thing though, if he tries to say I wasn't there and then it's proven that he's lying again, that's a legal issue, but that's also a character issue, right? Because so he already lied once, saying he wasn't there, and then he said yes. First he said it was a mile away, and then he said no, I was basically tailing him. Then now we're seeing that he potentially could been racing, and now that there's reports that he potentially was drinking earlier at a bar, so he could also been driving drunk. So he could have made plenty of bad decisions. Now he's 21. I made some very bad decisions when I was 21 too. I didn't do that, but I understand. You know, if you grew up not filthy rich and all of a sudden you have generational wealth by the time you're 21, I could understand making some bad decisions. But now is a time where if you're in the middle of this, it's time to grow up quickly and make the right decision so you don't fuck up the rest of your life. And if he continues to not take responsibility, I think they could bring the hammer on him. So I hope for his sake that his attorneys, his crisis counselors, whatever, are telling him to do the right thing, because I don't want him to ruin his career. And yes, it is unfortunate that people died. I'm not diminishing that, but at the same time, what I will say is those individuals that lost their lives were essentially part of this as well. So it's not, I'm not going to say that they are completely innocent, and I'm not trying to sound callous, but at the same time, I'm not going to put all of that on Jalen Carter as well.
Okay. All right. Well, fellas, let's move on to something a little bit brighter. A lot of quarterback talks come from the combine. Apparently, Derek Carr met up with the Colts, and Green Bay Packers um, was called by the Panthers about Aaron Rodgers. So, BT, I'll talk to you real quick. What do you think? Oh, and also, sorry for forget about this, but the Panthers seem to be all in for Anthony Richardson. So, BT, real quick, which one do you think is going to be the most impactful?
So I think that the Panthers wanting Richardson, that's something that I have been predicting honestly for a while. They have a great coaching staff. Frank Wright, Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown, I actually thought that would have been a great head coach. Believe it or not, I thought that he was incredibly qualified to be head coach. They got Ejiro Evero, so they've got a great DC. I think overall, if the Panthers strike it hot and they actually swing for the fences to get Anthony Richardson, they could actually be a threat. As far as Derek Carr is concerned, I don't necessarily know where he's going to end up. I really think it's going to be between the Jets and the Saints. And I think that if Aaron Rodgers doesn't stay in Green Bay, if he actually goes to the Jets, then I can see Derek Carr going to the Saints. If not, then yeah, he could go to the Jets. To tell you the truth, though, you know my feelings about Derek Carr. I think that while his numbers look great and sometimes he looks good, I really think he suffers from the Kirk Cousins disease. Right? He makes bad decisions at the most inopportune times, and so I think that's going to follow him. So to me, believe it or not, I feel like Anthony Richardson go to Carolina would be more of a threat to the league in the future than Derek Carr going somewhere.
All right. Chancellor, what about you? What do you think about these and who has the most impact?
Yeah, with the Derek Carr situation, I would say I think Aaron Rodgers is the big domino because I think the Jets, with their team and their makeup and the talent that they have on their roster, they're in win now mode. So the Jets are really trying to stall until they get a decision from Aaron Rodgers. Will he retire or will he stay? Well, and if he does stay in the NFL, will he stay with the Packers or can they broker out a deal with the Packers to bring him over there to New York? If not, I actually wouldn't mind seeing Derek Carr on that team. I think if you look at the options, Derek Carr is certainly an upgrade over the over the guys that they had lining up behind center this year. And you're talking about, look at that division. When you have the Miami Dolphins, who have a high-powered offense, you have the Buffalo Bills, who we know is a Super Bowl contender year in and year out, and they will be moving forward. I think Derek Carr puts you, at least gives you a puncher's chance. Now, how will he act in that 12th round? As you just kind of mentioned, BT, like that's another question. But like he'll at least give you some opportunities to win those ball games that we didn't see from Zach Wilson this year, and then it gives Zach another good pro to continue to learn behind as they try to figure out, if they had anything in him whatsoever as the number 2 pick. But as far as Carolina goes, the whole Aaron Rodgers to Carolina thing doesn't really make sense. And I don't think the Packers would also trade him. I don't think they want to trade him within conference either, A. And then B, I think if they do make a deal for Aaron Rodgers, the Packers end up trading him, I think they will work out something to where he wants to go. And I can guarantee you that Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to probably go to Carolina. And everything that I know about him, I think he wants to go to a team that has more options to win right now. And I think the Jets give him that best chance. And that's all if he doesn't stay in the entitled town in Green Bay.
I just want to add one thing that I know that Adam Schefter reported this, but I think it's malpractice if an organization doesn't try every single option to just at least seek out what it would cost. Like, we had reports that Kansas City had multiple teams calling to see how much they would want for Patrick Mahomes, and we know that obviously he wasn't going anywhere. So I don't give a lot of substance to the report saying the Panthers have called. Sure, I'm sure a ton of teams are called. It doesn't mean it means anything. It just means, hey, it's literally owner and general manager malpractice if you don't figure out, hey, let me give it a shot. Let's see what can happen.
Right, right. Well, Chris, thanks for finally joining us, man. Told you wanted to be a diva. What's your take on it?
Oh, what's the question? My bad for my tardiness. What's the question?
Who do you think is going to have the most impact on a team between Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, or Anthony Richardson to the Panthers?
Oh, Derek Carr for sure. I know BT don't like Derek Carr, but Derek Carr's he's not a great quarterback. He's a good quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, I just think his passion for the game is not the same anymore. So I don't think wherever he goes, he's still going to be. He's not going to be as good as he used to be. But I would say Derek Carr. Derek Carr on the Panthers, the Bucks, or the Jets would be a great move. Anthony Richardson, I think he's still 2 years away. In my personal opinion, he should stay in college one more year because I don't think he's quite ready. But if they say he's going to be a first-round pick, hell, go get your bag, So that's my take on that.
All right. Well, moving on to some more NFL Combine. I mean, there are already guys out there showing out. Nolan Smith, what he ran a 4.39, right? B.
Yeah, a 4.39.
4.39. Boy. And then you got the Duke defensive tackle. I'm not gonna murder his first name, so I'll just call him by his last name. Can't see. He just ran a 4.68. The fastest time by a defensive tackle since 2003. Aaron Donald ran it at 4.63. So that tells you a little bit fast. And I don't know if this is correct. Somebody sent it to me. So, but the measurements of Bryce Young is supposedly 6 foot and 200 pounds. So already the combine is not pulling any punches. Chancellor, I'll start with you, man. What's your thoughts about this?
Yeah, to me, the big winner of the day has to be Nolan Smith out of Georgia. I think there were some mocks that even had him potentially going to the Texans with that 33rd overall pick, second round. You can forget about that now. That's not happening with his speed and, just with his resume and what he was able to do at Georgia. I think a lot of teams are already high on him, and we know the type of defensive guys that Georgia has been able to put out lately. And so now, if you're the Texans, depending on what you do at 2, you might have to consider him at 12. And I'm interested to see, if D'Amico Ryans can get a hand on an athlete like that, and you can pair him up next to a guy like Christian Harris, who I know the Texans are extremely high on. Now you're talking, and now you're cooking if you're D'Amico Ryans, who obviously is a defensive-minded guy. He would be great on the team. Now, obviously, Bryce Young, that was the big question as far as his measurements go. But, if 6 feet is actually, that's a game changer. Now you are talking about, 6 feet, 200 pounds. The issue is everybody knows that when Bryce Young touches the field to play on a Sunday afternoon, he won't be 200 pounds. Like, that's not his playing weight. That's hey, let me look good on the scale. And so to kind of quiet down these size, this size conversation. But yeah, 6 feet, 200 pounds coming into the to the combine. That's a good sign for Bryce Young and his team, as he has potential to go number 1 overall.
All right, Chris, what about you? Which one's impressing you so far?
Yeah, it gotta be the guy out of Georgia, but the Bryce Young way, I hope that's his real way. If it is, BT, I can make fun of you right now because you thought you were gonna be smaller than that, see, like me, I'm a Bryce Young guy. Chance, who are you? You're a Bryce Young CJ guy?
Definitely a Bryce Young guy.
Okay, now what do you like about Bryce more than you like about CJ?
So to me, the biggest thing about Bryce is all the talk about all this conversation about size and everything like that. To me, like when it comes to the quarterback position, you either got it or you don't. And when I watch Bryce Young, he has everything that you're looking for as far as like when the game's on the line. Like, I trust him, and so I feel like now in this draft conversations, especially if you're in the AFC, you're going to have to deal with number 15 for the next decade. You're not going to, you're good luck trying to find a quarterback that's better than him. But what you want is a guy that, hey, in a shootout, if he has the ball last, can you beat him? And I'm going to give you an example. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, hey, Joe Burrow can do that. You know that in a shootout, Joe Burrow can go pound for pound with him, toe to toe with him. There's a couple other teams, in the AFC. Justin Herbert, he hasn't really proven it yet at the highest level, but you feel confident if you're a Chargers fan that he can go do that. The whole conversation, I'll get back to Bryce Young in a second, but I know there's some Texans fans who were like, hey, like, believe in Davis Mills, give him another year, give him weapons. Come on now. Do you trust him to go not only beat Patrick Mahomes at the highest level? If you say you had to get Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game, but you still had to go through Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow first, and or maybe Josh Allen, can he go toe to toe with those guys 3 straight rounds? The answer to that question is no. I haven't seen it.
It's a hell no.
It's a hell no. But a guy like Bryce Young, what we've seen, obviously college is college. Things can change, at the NFL level, but I've seen him do it. And so to me, that's what I look at in a guy in those big pressure situations going against that elite competition. Everybody wants to say, well, how will he look against, NFL's, type players? Well, he played in the SEC. Half of the defensive guys come from the SEC. So he's going against some of these guys, every single Saturday, once you get in the conference play. So that's why I'm really high on Bryce Young. I've seen him be able to make all the throws. And to me, it's not necessarily about how big is his arm. Because you look at another guy, as I used earlier, Joe Burrow. It's not like Joe Burrow has a cannon of an arm, but when the game's on the line, you trust him. So that's why I personally am really high on Bryce Young.
All right.
Okay, hold on. So one more thing before we get to BT. Okay, so Chance, do you see Bryce Young playing more than 3 years in the NFL?
Of course, yes.
Okay,
All right.
I had to ask that because it's a guy I know says he's he's not gonna play more than 3 years, so I had to ask that question.
Speaking of that guy, BT, what's your thought?
So here's why I think that the Texans should draft CJ over Bryce. Bryce definitely has the processing. He has the skill. The issue that I have is that we don't know, and I don't know if these are the official weight and stuff, because I thought the official weights were for quarterbacks and stuff weren't coming out till Saturday, but in any case, my issue with him is frame. It's not necessarily height, right? Because we've had Russell Wilson, we've had shorter quarterbacks play and succeed and win a Super Bowl. The issue really is frame. Frame has really been my concern. And when you're getting slammed by 320-pound D linemen 40 times a year, how is that going to impact your play? And yes, has he played in the SEC? Yeah. But he's also had this shoulder problem multiple times, according to Nick Saban, that he has this shoulder AC joint issue. He has to stop playing for a bit, and then when he plays, then yeah, he's all right. The thing is, he has to take time off, and that's already happening in college. And to me, what I find challenging is that we are an organization that has won 11 games in 3 years, and if he's 6 foot and 200 pounds, we know that he's going to really be like 192 around there or so on his playing weight. Are we gonna be able to put that on his frame? And it's really more of a frame issue than anything else. I never said this with Kyler Murray, because if you looked at Kyler Murray was diesel. He looked like he could beat any dude up. Because of how strong that he looked. Same thing with Russell Wilson, even Drew Brees. The issue with Bryce Young is not his height particularly, it's his frame. And that's why I think that CJ Stroud, who didn't have the off script, didn't showcase his off script stuff like Bryce Young, and he had, two of the best receivers in the country. He had a much better O-line. He had the tools to succeed. And I understand all of that about CJ. But I do think in the West Coast system and in the Bobby Slowick or Shanahan style system, what you could have is that you'll have basically his floor, in my opinion, is Jimmy G. So if you have CJ, who's 6'3", 220 pounds, whose floor is Jimmy G, in a Shanahan style offense, with now that we have the picks, we should have a top receiver. We should have at least one or two more capable running backs. Rex Burkhead needs to be shooed away, right? We should have an actual roster that can support even if CJ was a Jimmy G level player. What happens with Bryce Young? There's going to be a lot of concern. I mean, seriously, I'm going to bring my rosary beads every single time I have to watch him on Sunday, because I'm going to be praying for him and making sure that he doesn't get hurt. And again, it's not just a single injury. It's the cumulative injuries over 3-4 years getting pummeled by 320-pound D linemen, and that is a concern that I have about Bryce Young.
So I do want to respond to what you were saying. First off, because I want to make sure for listeners out there, the QB measurements haven't come out yet. The only people that they measured so far today was just the linebackers who competed. So
that's why I thought. That's why I first said I don't know if it's true or not, because that's
sure.
what I thought as well. But
for sure. So to your point though, VT, about if that's why CJ Stroud at 2, I don't love, because I like, what is his ceiling? And if you're telling me his ceiling is Jimmy G at number 2, I'll pass. Just give me one Anderson.
I would think that's his floor.
Well, okay. Well, let's just say he ultimately he is a Jimmy G. Look at what like you said, the West Coast offense and build a team around him. Listen, the 49ers just traded draft picks to go get Trey Lance because they felt like Jimmy G wasn't the long-term answer. Now, obviously, he can be better than Jimmy G. I understand what you're saying. But my point is, if you're talking about at number 2, your best bet, and, you said it's his floor, but you're thinking about a guy who can be, his floor is Jimmy G. I'm cool off that. Like, I would rather go get, another guy like Will Anderson or maybe swing at, we'll see about Will Levis. I would much rather have CJ Stroud than Will Levis at this point. But yeah, like as far as the Jimmy G comp, I'm cool off that personally.
To be honest with you, I don't think he reminds me of Jimmy G. He reminds me of a Dominic McNabb. I think he'd be that's who his floor to me is Dominic McNabb. The way he sits in the pocket, the way he can get out of the pocket, plus his arm strength has a lot of McNabb type playing skills to it. But that's just me.
I just want to add a thing, since we're on this combine stuff, and we haven't talked about quarterbacks sizes and stuff besides Bryce Young. My personal opinion, I know this won't happen, but my personal opinion is that Anthony Richardson has the highest ceiling in the draft.
I agree with that.
And I think that I really would hope that we would take a swing on him. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that because of the situation that we're in, being as poor of a franchise in terms of wins and losses in the past 3 years, that I don't think they're going to swing for the fences and get AR. I think they are going to go for a safer pick like CJ. And unfortunately, I really think that even though they're talking to all 4 quarterbacks, I really think they're seriously only considering Bryce and CJ because of the situation that they're in. From a PR perspective, we know from talking to both Aaron Wilson and John McClain that Hannah and Cal got involved in football decisions. The Lovie Smith was a last-minute decision, and Josh McCown was supposed to be head coach, and that was changed because ownership got involved. I think that ownership has also come out, ownership has come out and talked about changes in the franchise and that they want to win now. And I don't think that they will necessarily allow, if I'm going to use that word, allow Nick to swing for the fences and get Anthony Richardson, who needs probably about 2 to 3 years to develop because he has mechanic issues. He needs to read defenses better, etc. He's not going to be great out of the gate. And so I think they are going to go for that safer pick, that someone that has a higher floor rather than someone that has a super high ceiling. So if I was a GM, though, I would say, fuck the fans, fuck the ownership, get AR, and let's build with him, because I think we are building a hell of staff. Right? We've got Bobby Slowick, Bill Lazor. And by the way, I talked to his son, so go to TexansFanBattle.com and read that article about him. But we have Chancellor Johnson. We have put together, believe it or not, a pretty great offensive staff, a staff that I'm impressed by. Frankly, I'm more impressed by the offensive staff than the defensive staff. And I did not see that coming into this when D'Amico Ryans was hired. So I do think that we have the capability of fixing the issues with AR. However, from a PR standpoint, I don't see them making that decision because of how we have functioned for the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid argument that nobody. I mean, it's true. I don't think that Nick Casario has a lot of time left, if that makes sense. Well, let's move it on to why we are here, fellas. Texans at the Combine. Speaking of all these 4 quarterbacks, the Texans have spoke to every single quarterback. I'm kind of on the line with Chancellor. I do not want Will Levis, especially at 2. I would like Anthony Richardson, just not at 2. If we can trade back or if he falls, I wouldn't mind him. Right now, I'm still on the Bryce Young trade. I'm the guy who, if you don't get Bryce Young, you get C.J. Stroud. You don't get C.J. Stroud, you get Bryce Young. I think both those guys is a tremendous upgrade from Davis Mills and can turn around the game. But Chancellor, real quick, who do you think? I mean, you kind of said you want Bryce Young, but what do you actually think will happen?
Yeah, so to the point, as much as I want Bryce Young, VT, I will say I am, along the same lines with you as far as down the line injury concerns about Young, with his frame. So that's why I don't love the idea of giving up capital to trade up to go get him, because there's still risk involved. It's not like there's a surefire, hey, like, if it was next year and it was Caleb Williams and maybe there was a non-QB needy team there, okay, cool, go get him, right? But with Bright, there's still some risk, whether it's him, whether it's CJ Stroud, whether it's Levis, whoever AR. That's why I would rather just have them sit where they are, and especially after a mess that they shouldn't have been in the first place, and then having to kind of redo that, to trade up to go get a guy that, once again, he is. I do think he'll be successful, but it's still not a guarantee. So I would, I would call the Colts bluff if they want to trade up and give up significant capital, because there'd be much more capital than the Texans would have to give up to go from 4, to 1. Then let them do that. But I'm hoping, for the Texans' sake, that it's not the case, and that Bryce Young will fall to them for 2, and maybe Chicago just stands pat.
BC, real quick, what about you? What do you think?
So I think the Colts are going to try to move up, but I don't think they'll accomplish it. I think the Bears are going to ask for more than really these quarterbacks are worth. I don't think in this particular class that these quarterbacks, all 4 of them, are worth giving up massive capital for, like a Caleb Williams would be, right? The strange part here is that I don't think this is a very strong quarterback class. However, we have 9 QB needy teams, and so I do think that there will be some trade up. I personally think that Arizona is a prime spot for a trade up, because I think Arizona, in my opinion, isn't really happy with Kyler Murray, and they potentially, if they're smart, preparing for life after Kyler, and they should be stacking up picks for later on. And so I see them being able to take a discount on someone like the Raiders, moving up to 3 to get a quarterback there. So I do think something like that could happen. Going to first overall, however, is too much. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think the Bears, especially now with the Jalen Carter news, I think the Bears will eventually just end up staying put. I think that the Texans will be able to pick whatever quarterback that they want at 2. I think it would be a mistake to trade up. I tweeted this out, and I'll stand by it, that if we trade up, it's time to look and see if Nick Casares should still have a job, frankly, because there was a way to get that first overall pick if he really wanted to, by putting Cooks or Tunsil on the inactive list. I mean, there's a lot of ways, and I know that might be a harsh statement because he has done some good things, but the bottom line is, if we're trading up, we made a massive mistake, and it's time to see why the hell we made that mistake.
Well, to be fair to Nick Casario in that regard, that could be out of his hands. That could be Cal saying, "Hey, look, I want him. Do whatever it takes." And then it might not be in it to him. Also, obviously, when it comes to the draft process, it is a collaborative effort. His scouts could tell him, "Hey, listen, we gotta get him." Like, at this point, though, it is frustrating with the way that the season played out. But now you do have to move past that. And if the Texans believe Bryce Young is the guy, and everybody's on board, from not only Nick Casario, but so is D'Amico Ryans and the scouts, I'm not putting that blame on Nick Casario, because at the end of the day, okay, well, what will it cost, right? Because if you're saying, hey, we'll give you the 33rd pick and then maybe maybe a future 3rd or something, okay, that's, it's not ideal. You don't want to have to give up that capital, but it's not like it's, hey, a future first, for next year when the Texans still could have a top 10 pick potentially. That's a different story. Maybe if it's 12, that's different. But if it's maybe, third pick and maybe a future pick that's not first round, it might not be as harsh, especially if they really do believe, and whether it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or whoever, if they believe this is our guy.
Okay. Uh-huh. Christoph, what about you?
Well, I agree everything what VT said. I don't think the Bears gonna trade because of the Jalen Carter news. They should get Will Anderson, and like VT said, we're gonna either get CJ or Bryce, but most likely Bryce. And then Cap, that's his alma mater, so why not get Bryce? I just think he's a baller. I don't care about the size, the frame. I just think that he got everything I need in the quarterback: the process, the footwork. He's smart. Just like the one of the comments said, he's Curry. He's Curry from the NBA. So that's my guy. I'm gonna stick with it. And if we get him, VT, I'm coming for you.
All right. Moving on. There was a lot of interviews with D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio. D'Amico Ryans pretty much said about Bryce Young. I hope success for wherever he goes, and the system of a quarterback. And the Caserio kind of talking about trading period. He uses a different scale than most other teams do, and also they sat down and watched game film with Will Anderson. So maybe they don't trade up and somebody else does, and they go after Will Anderson at 2. Chancellor, I'll start with you. What caught your eye the most from the Texans interviews and whatnot?
Well, to me, the biggest thing is that they're doing their due diligence at the quarterback position as they should. There's reports that they talked to Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, and Bryce Young. And like I said, they should do that. I think if you're the Texans, that interview list should also extend to some of the top defensive draft picks if they haven't already, because you want to let Chicago know, hey, if you trade down, like we are, even if it's a smoke screen, we're considering these guys too, because that Chicago probably wanting a defensive guy. But we'll see how these interviews play out with these quarterback positions. I think it is important that they are looking at a guy like Anthony Richardson, who maybe they ultimately fall in love with him. Maybe they get him in a room and they say, hey man, this is our guy over potentially a Bryce Young, or maybe they say, hey, to hell with any of the size expectations with Bryce Young. We love his leadership. We love his film, because I'm sure they already do there, and we love what he can bring to the table in our locker room.
All right. Well, I'm going to shoot off to our other special guest, James Harden. Crenshaw. What was your most impressive thing of the interviews for the Texans?
I think the most impressive thing is when D'Amico said that we're going to get. Well, first, he still haven't called Davis Mills by name. And second, he said he was going to draft a quarterback and we're going to get one in free agency. That right there lets me know that Davis Mills isn't the guy anymore. And I hope the fans that still ride with Davis Mills can see that and stop trying to pressure me and others that still think he is the guy. That ship came and went. He's gone. They threw him over like they did your boy in Black Panther. So he's gone.
Oh.
So, but yeah, that's my take on that.
Well, it looks like we lost BT. I kind of like what Casario said. He threw a couple of saves of maybe we'll trade up, maybe we won't trade down. But I did like it how he said he does not use the same. I forget what scale he said it was. He mentioned it by name, but I'm glad he justifies the trades different than NFL, because if every NFL team did the same way, it would just be boring and almost impossible for trades. But I will say this to these fans, guys, I love your mock drafts. They're amazing, but put Madden down for a year, because the mock trades you make, man, you've been getting them from Madden. It's just nuts. I seen one we had the first, third, fifth pick from trading Tunzel and Cooks. Like, come on, guys. Like, that's not going to happen. Be realistic. I love your enthusiasm, but please stop. It's hurting my eyes. Well, Chancellor, man, we appreciate you coming on. This is a segment that we've grown to love. It's where we ask you a couple questions. You down for that?
Let's do it.
All right, Crenshaw, I'll start with you. You got a a question for Mr. Chancellor? I hope I didn't lose him too.
Froze on us.
And I'm supposed to be. Can you hear it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I got three for you, Chance. All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. One, what's your favorite gummy bears? Two.
You know what's funny about it? Go ahead.
Okay. Two. I need one of those pies. And three, what's your favorite Denzel Washington movie?
All right, so I'll start with the first one. Man, I guess you saw the bio. Man, I kill gummy bears, man. I go through like a big bag. I mean, like it takes me like just 2 days, and I'll just kill them. I just always need something to kind of just like chew on, pause. But you know what I mean. That's one. Two, pies. I can see if I can hook you up. My buttermilk pies are stupendous. I usually get them done during holiday season. Thanksgiving, Christmas, but just get at me. I'm saying I might slide you one for the low. Favorite Denzel Washington movie, I would say Equalizer. That's probably like a popular pick, but I mean Equalizer, he was phenomenal in that movie. I mean, he got so many choices. I also really high on Training Day as well. But the first Equalizer is my favorite one from Denzel.
My favorite is John Q. I think that's the most underrated Denzel movie of all time. BT. We moved to the question part. We know we lost you for a second. So
Yes.
do you have any questions for Mr. Chancellor?
I do. First, I have to answer the Denzel Washington and say that Man on Fire was such an amazing flick. Amazing. There's, if you haven't seen it by now, you have to stop watching this podcast and just watch it. I mean, it is that freaking good. But my question is, I know that you said that you're a foodie, and aside from gummy bears, what's your favorite go-to comfort food?
Probably oxtails. They're so good. Either oxtails or just some good chicken wings. I'm kind of on a search around Houston for actually a couple things. Barbecue. I love brisket and ribs, and then wings. Matter of fact, I can go with some wings right now. But number one is oxtails. My mom, just being from the South, my mom used to bake them, and I go to town on them, man.
Sadly, Chancellor, I live up in this suck town of Kansas City, and when I ask people for oxtails, they're like, "What?
It is, yeah.
What is that?" Yeah, so
Keep finding the good Texans fight up there in Kansas City. I know it's incredibly hard in that type of time.
Oh, dude, trust me, it is. It truly is. Well, man, I got a couple questions for you. You spent some time up there in Green Bay. Could you ever outdrink their tackle? I don't want to hit.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
David Bakhtiari, no chance.
Not even trying it, huh?
Not even no point.
And this is outside of football, but is the Greek the Freak a athleticism beast like he is on TV, or does TV not do him justice?
No, yeah. Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, I mean, he's special. I think he could go down as a top 10 player ever. Like with the trajectory that he's on, from the MVP, Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. He might have two Defensive Player of the Years, if I'm not mistaken. And if he gets one more championship, he's right there in that conversation. Right now, he's probably a top 20 player currently. Just once again with his body of work, and he's still getting better. That's the scary part. I remember when teams used to say, just make him shoot a jumper, and that's still the best case scenario over him just bullying his way to the rim. But now, not only does he have a pull-up jumper, he has a back-to-the-basket game where he'll turn around right shoulder and drop it over over their defense. So he continues to get better, and he, in my opinion, I think he is currently the best player in the world right now.
All right. One more, and I'll see if anybody else has any. Like I mentioned, you stayed in Green Bay a little bit, but you are a Houston native. So which one's better, Houston or Green Bay? And why is it Houston?
That's not a question, man.
Right.
Green Bay was cool, but it's not my type of town. I enjoyed it there. The fan base I think the Packers probably have the best fan base. If I'm calling a spade, the whole town lives, breathes everything Packers. I can tell you, when I was in Green Bay, that was during the COVID years, and it's obviously they didn't have fans at that time, and like that impacts the economy in that area. Like they literally run on the Packers tourism, those home games, and when they didn't have that, it impacted the area so much. But it was cool, having the opportunity to be in the locker room with guys like Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and so on.
The weather sucked though, huh?
Oh, I mean, I don't miss it at all.
All right. Well, guys, I'll start with you, Chris. Do you have any other questions?
Who is the best athlete to come out of Arizona State?
I would say James Harden. It's got to be Barry Bonds. It's got to be Barry Bonds.
I forgot he went there, man.
Yeah, I can't have Barry Bonds erasure. But lately, of course, James Harden, what he's been able to do, one of my favorite players to ever play the game.
All right. BT, any more questions?
Yeah, I have one last question. And so I know that you have been really talking about sports since high school, right? You said you started then. Now, if you could go from then to now, was there any either interview or piece that you're working on that where you were really impressed by someone outside of sports, even though they're a player? Like, is there someone that really just impressed you on a personal basis?
Man, the best thing about like my job, obviously I'm at a good chunk of these games, and I'm there for some of these really cool moments. But storytelling really is my favorite part. And so, I think it's really big for me to have an opportunity, at least when it comes to these athletes, to have them trust you with a story. So, for example, Tremont Smith from the Texans, I did a story about him and his mom during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. His mom was battling breast cancer, and she was able to overcome that, and kind of learning about his journey. And like he found out his mom had cancer like right around the time he got drafted. And so, and honestly, like that's how I've been able to build relationships too. Now, me and Tremont, like we're close, we're cool. I'm interested to see what happens with him in free agency. And so having that opportunity to kind of, connect with the guys and be able to share that story, have them trust me. I can't pinpoint one, in particular, but it's always really fun to cover these guys on a very, much deeper level.
All right. Okay. Well, man, thank you again for coming on. Why don't you tell our guest?
Well, hold on. I got one more. I got one more.
I should have known.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you talk about just for a little bit, like when you interviewed Dream, what was one of the things he said that inspired you or just like really hit home with you?
The greatest center of all time.
Yeah,
yes, the greatest center of all time.
When it came to Hakeem, I've interviewed a lot of people, but Hakeem I was definitely the most geeked about. I was a little fan.
I would too, bro.
Yeah, now also, mind you, I was probably like 19 years old. I was still in college at the time, and to have that opportunity, I remember, looking back on it, I'm interviewing him. I got this big cheesy smile on my face the entire time. As far as the motivational question, it wasn't really that. Just to be able to have that opportunity that young to talk to a legend, and ever since then, like now, like that was when I was still in college at the time, when I was at Arizona State. But I see him all the time at Houston sporting events. He still remembers me, and he was such a nice guy. Allowing me to do that really meant a lot to me. And so, like I said, it's all fun and all great part of this business and thing. Look, I get paid to do this, man. Like I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. Hey, boy, anything else there, folks? No? All right. Well, Chancellor, before Crenshaw cut me off, thank you for coming on. Tell the folks where we can find your good stuff and what you got coming up in social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find my work, really, if you're in Houston, on Channel 2 on KPRC. I anchor on Saturdays. Then we have Sports Sunday, where we go a little bit more in depth, talking Texans and Astros, Rockets, whoever. And then our report throughout the week as well. Catch me on Channel 2 KPRC, and then you can find me on Twitter at Chancellor TV. That's where most of my content goes. For me right now, I'm getting ready for the NCAA tournament. With University of Houston. Apologize for that. So that'll be fun. Their Final Four is in Houston this year. They have a real opportunity of hosting it from the crib. So, I'm excited for that coming up.
National champion Houston Cougars right there.
I like the sound of that. All
BT, where we got you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Brown Chubby Bear, and you could also find my articles at TexansFanBattle.com. As I was saying during the broadcast, my last one is about Bill Lazor. I was able to talk to his son Nolan, who talked about how his father helped him work on his balance and mechanics. So I thought it was a pretty good article. I will be
Great
working on
article.
another one on Shane Day as well. So look forward to that, and just check out Texas Fan Battle. And if you are .com, and if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We just finally hit 500 subs, and the goal is to get past $1,000 subs for this year. So if you haven't subbed on our YouTube channel, go ahead. I looked at the stats, and 98% of our views on YouTube are people that don't sub to us. If you're watching us that much, it's time to sub. So go ahead and sub to our YouTube channel.
Do it. Crenshaw, what about you, brother?
You can find me at Fifth Ward Crenshaw everywhere. Like VT say, sub please. And that's about it. Oh yeah, Final Four, Cougs, come on, bring it home, man. Bring it home.
Exactly.
I will be at the games.
That's all that matters is bringing it home. You can find me at A1 Day One Texans, and like VT said, right now we are at the Texans Fan Battle, but here soon our network is launching a website, fanbattlesports.com. So make sure to check that out. It's going to have, the greatest show of all time, the Texans Fan Battle. But we'll also have the AFC South, the Horseshoe Mob, and the other suck teams of the division on there as well, plus more to grow. So make sure you check out. And like VT said, guys, what are you doing? Sub to the channel already. I mean, come on now. Yeah, and you can find me at A1 Day One Texans, and on Sunday nights you can find me talking trash to the other teams on the AFC South Fan Battle. Guys, until then, hopefully we have some more stuff great at the Combine. We'll come at you live next Wednesday with Patrick Storm. So make sure you tune in and have a great night.
Thanks for having me, guys.